You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Successful Screenwriter Podcast, where we discuss anything and everything screenwriting. Here we interview successful screenwriters and filmmakers to find out just what it takes to make it in the industry. Just a heads up, this episode is brought to you by my book, The Guide for Every Screenwriter, which has been listed as one of the best screenwriting books of all time by the Book Authority. If you're looking for something that reveals the secrets of screenwriting in an easy to understand and engaging way, then this is the book for you. You can find The Guide for Every Screenwriter at thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com/books. Now, on to the show. All right, welcome to the podcast. I have on an awesome guest today. Director Christina Zorich. She wrote and filmed this really powerful documentary called The New Abolitionists. Thanks for being on with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
I had the privilege of watching this documentary, and it is really eye-opening. It's about human sex trafficking in Cambodia and then throughout Southeast Asia in general. And what I really appreciated about this documentary is this, unlike other documentaries where they talk about these larger than life human sex trafficking stories that get a lot of press that everyone knows about, you take a more personal approach of kind of getting into like what the everyday person is going through and suffering from with human sex trafficking over there. And I think it's really needed to be done. And I'm so glad that you're able to not only risk your safety, but get this story told.
Thank you. I mean, it's kind of a beast of burden for me. I found out about it and could not shake. You know, you can't unscramble an egg, right? Once you know something, you know something. And because I'm, the kind of person who asks a lot of questions, always has, very curious and interested, even when I'm an actress and I've taught acting for many years, and, part of acting and even, oh no.
What's happening?
It's an Amber Alert. Unbelievable.
Are you serious?
I don't know what to make of it.
Wow.
I'm ignoring it. There's some Amber Alert on my phone. I think it's something to do with, who knows what it has to do with. Sorry about that, everybody.
It is apropos.
Oh, an Amber Alert, right?
Yeah, it is. I'm going to leave it in. I'm not even going to cut it out because I actually think that really says a whole lot about
our society.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me about, this is produced by the late and great Olympia Dukakis. And you two created this together, but what brought you to this project? How did you discover it? What made you say, I have to get this out there so people can see it?
Well, my mom's kind of the hero of the story, in the sense that I'll give you a little bit of a timeline, and I'm going to try to do the Cliff Notes version. Basically, I had an apartment that I owned in New York and moved to LA and started with a teaching job and started teaching there, and went to a Christmas party at one of my students' homes in, I think it was 2012, and met an anti-trafficker, a woman who I have incredible respect for. Erica Grieve. She runs an NGO called Unlikely Heroes. And she had been a registered nurse, and a lot of women and children were coming into the hospital who had been trafficked, and there was no system to help restore them and bring them back physically, but specifically emotionally and mentally from the incredible trauma they had experienced. Right. And so she had decided to leave her profession and start an NGO and build homes for rescued women and children, staff them, to then help her and eventuate their healing and their restoration. And she was ambitious when I met her and looking to start. I think they already had one home, and she started telling me stories of. I knew that they were going to need fundraising materials to raise money. That they were looking for, forgive the glib term, but celeb causes or cause celebrity or the people, I can't remember the term, but where they would get a celebrity attached to the cause to kind of raise awareness, raise funds,
right.
But, and I immediately, once she told me some horror stories, and it was like time stood still. It was just a moment where I just felt like, I remember it like we have certain moments in our life where we feel the course of our life changes. And it was one of those moments for me. I did not know about human sex trafficking. I had not heard about it. And I was shocked that I felt myself to be so educated and sophisticated, and I didn't know. And at that time in 2012. And so I became kind of obsessed with understanding what it was and why it was and how it was.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, I threw at her, I said to her, how can I help? Of course, I want to be of service to you. And so I threw her a lot of directors and cinematographers that I knew would help her shoot materials to help fundraise. And everyone met with, a few of them met with her, well, all of them that I sent to her, but they all asked for money, which is of course reasonable. And I had asked them not to, but they did when they talked to her about the details of it. And I knew that that's what a reasonable person would do, because we're talking about labor and cost. And she said to me, Christina, the money that we have that we do raise has to go to the girls.
Yeah.
So I remember in that moment thinking, somebody has to do a documentary about this. If I don't know what's happening, then there are others out there that don't really understand what's happening. And there needs to be people who will do this as an act of service.
Right.
It can't be done for gain. It just has to be an act of service. Cut to a few years later, I sold my property. And it wasn't because of that. It was because of co-op board laws. And then I had all this money on my hand, and it took me about a year, maybe less, of really praying and meditating and really, I had produced little stuff here and there, but I mean, producing a movie wasn't even in my, consciousness.
Yeah.
But I had that thought at that moment about making a documentary. So when a few years later, things just unraveled in my life, or, kind of moved towards this event. And I think I was praying with a prayer partner of mine, and it just kind of hit me. And of course I didn't feel prepared to do it at all.
Right.
But I used the money that it was a 2-year, first I went to Southeast Asia, and followed a bunch of anti-trafficking NGOs, and all of them kind of knew each other. So I was in this kind of like little circle of people who interacted doing this work there, and shot it, but came back and realized I didn't have the movie. So then spent another year preparing, reaching out to trying to curb the favor, and really what you have to do is make these people feel safe,
right.
Cared for, respected. I mean, they're doing, in my opinion, heroic work. And
absolutely.
And so for me, I wanted them to feel honored, and while also trying to be as honest as possible on every front about the complexities of this issue. So that happened. And then, of course, after about that 2-year period of pre-production, production, I came back with 600 hours of footage, which is insane.
Wow.
And then I spent 3 years. I had an assistant editor. Somebody gave me some great advice. They said, you can't have an editor work all the way through with you all the way to the finish line. You're going to exhaust them. Get assistant editors who can work at a certain level with slimming down footage, and then have a rough cut editor come in, and then have a fine cut editor. So, I was learning this all as I go. Halfway through the edit, though, I ran out of money and had a family meeting and begged my mother to come on as a producer, and she came on. Later, when she saw the fine cut, and, she said some really wonderfully supportive and loving things to me. And I said, why did you come on and do this? Why did you, this was because it was like 2 years of, really financing it. And,
Wow.
and she said to me, I wanted you to have this. And, she believed in, what the film's about through and through, but I think on a personal level, this was a huge gift she gave me. And she was really the hero that brought it over the finish line. So yeah, I'm getting a little emotional thinking about it.
It's
but
beautiful.
yeah.
It really is. And the script really paid off. I mean, the documentary is powerful. When you went overseas to do the filming, did you have an idea of where you wanted to go with this, with the doc? Did you have a script in hand, or did you just decide you're going to explore and really figure out these people's stories?
Well, it's so funny. I think the part of my brain as an actress, when I started teaching acting, that wants to understand structure. There's all these different schools of acting, and when I started teaching, I was like, gosh, this is so complex. How do I reduce it to something that's tangible? Truth is truth, in my opinion, right? So there has to be an innate truth to something, right?
Yeah.
So any science or discipline has a truth to the structure of it, right? So that was where my mind was, because I'm like, this has to be something we can hold and understand. You can't vanquish something if you don't understand it, right?
Right.
You can't approach it properly without an understanding of the elements of the structure of it, right? So, and I felt that way as an actress teaching acting, and then I started feeling that way about this. And so, the people that we followed, let's put it this way, I didn't have anything written. I had an outline, the same with the budget.
Okay.
And I would just go, okay, the thing that's crazy to me about a budget with a documentary is like, you have an idea and then you push past that. It's the same with an outline.
I would assume you would get blindsided.
Yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where, and a friend of mine was actually working on a really amazing documentary at the time. He came on to just give me some fine cut eyes at the end.
Cool.
I can't remember the name of it, but I loved it. It was up for an Oscar. It was on, I think HBO, or maybe no, I don't, but it was and I said to him, what's it like working on that? Because he was working in tandem at that time and helping me out here and there. He said, they go through the same stuff. You have an arbitrary budget, or you have a deadline, or you have something written that kind of structurally makes sense. And then that changes, because the more you educate yourself on the subject matter, your understanding deepens.
Yeah.
And then the story changes, because you understand it deeper on a deeper level. So that's kind of the process I went through.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I started off with one kind of understanding of how I perceived what was happening in this region. And then that flipped somewhat. And sometimes it didn't, sometimes it stayed similar, but it expanded,
It can be a bit of a rabbit hole, can't it?
Well, if we look at anything, there's an inherent structure to it. There's an inherent purpose to things. There is inherent superficial understanding. And then there's a more pay dirt understanding of it. And, obviously, it's also such a hard subject matter. The first year, even in pre-production, I was like an emotional basket case.
I bet.
It was so, to be able to tolerate the process.
Let's talk about the process, though, because I actually really like your take on how you develop this. Instead of going down there and just finding individuals, you have a really unique approach to where you follow different ministries and how they were tackling this problem, this issue, and trying to save people. And the really interesting thing is, each of these ministries you followed, they all had a unique approach to it. Some of them did job training. Some of them just did financial support. Other ones did counseling. And I thought it was really interesting to see how they had these different methodologies of trying to curtail, sex trafficking.
Well, they all had some of the same elements, right? Like there is the psychological, emotional element. All of them deal with that. You can't evade that. All of them have the financial aspect and the practical aspect. Some of them, focus. I mean, basically, listen. All of them have to address every aspect.
Right.
Annie says in the film, the push factors, because there's certain push factors that push a woman or child or a young boy into trafficking, and
Wow.
so those push factors have to be addressed. They have to be confronted. So and frankly, that's one of the main ways the film changed me as a person, because I would not have called myself a confrontational person before I made the movie. And I think that word has an ugly connotation, especially for women.
Yeah.
And I had to work through that and go, problem solving means you have to develop the girth emotionally to stay with a problem till you find solution, until you're willing to get to the solving of it. And that made me more I kind of altered in that way. I because all of them said this problem will not get solved until we're willing to confront it. It will not.
Right.
I mean, we can be educated and we can know it exists and we can disagree on who or what, which most of those disagreements are based in, conspiracy, crazy stuff. I mean, the bottom line is it cuts across political party, it cuts across sexual persuasion, it cuts across age, it cuts across nationality. Sex trafficking morphs to the culture and the religion it's in. I mean, it's like this wily, snake that seems to be. So, I mean, for us to vanquish it, we have to kind of develop the girth to be able to confront it in a really reasonable way, even though it's not a reasonable subject matter. It makes us, as I said, the first year, it was like, I was always emotionally out of my mind. That's why I really focused on, because every movie I read, every book I read was very dark and intense and sensational. And I couldn't tolerate it, So that's why I wanted to focus on the people who had solutions, who were boots down fighting it, and had dedicated their lives to making this change. I mean, everyone in the movie on some level gave up everything to be a part of changing this. It's one of those subject matters that brings up that kind of, it did in me. It certainly did in me. It brings up this very emotional, visceral response, and you can't shake it.
No, it's powerful. It really is.
Yeah.
And to see a light shown on those individuals trying to really fight this and have this cause as part of their being. It's in their core. You can see it. You can feel it when you listen to them talk about it. You can see them get emotional, and you can see why they're doing it. And it really, to me, made me think, well, you could know about human trafficking, but then to really see it and to witness this is a whole different level.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the first trip I made, there was a street we went to, and I'm not even going to, I want people to see the movie, and I don't want to, so I'm not going to get to specifics, but,
well, the entire city is developed essentially around sex trafficking, which blew my mind. I mean, I was aware that it existed. I knew it was there. I knew it was part of the culture. I knew there was facets of tourism involved in it, but I didn't realize that it was like the cornerstone of that city, where some towns are oil towns, or other towns are coal towns. It's a sex town. It's a sex industry of human trafficked children. It is wild to even think that is real, and that is the reality of it. And to see you really covering that in this way is profound. What I really did appreciate, though, was you took it a step further, and that you said, okay, how did this come to be? And you really dive into how its government wanted more tourism, which then led to more of a sex trade, which then brought in trafficking, and then it even became geopolitical and corruption. So you really cover the bases to kind of, as I said, dive into that rabbit hole of how this came to be.
Well, to me, but again, it comes back to that part of me that wants to understand structure. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that part of me that wanted to, like, if I was working on a character, the backstory, you want to update their bio. There's a series of traumas. There's a series of wounds. There's the circumstances of their birth. There's always original events that lead to the now of why things are the way they are. And an investigation of myself, or who I am, or why I am, or why you are who you are, or why this problem is what it is in our society. I mean, it begs us to do that so that we can kind of unmask it, but also be able to really to call it out. You know, I mean, I think we all
to truly understand it.
Yeah, but and in doing that, we unmask it, and by unmasking it, it no longer has the same power over us. I mean, we can't glamorize something that's like, shivering in a corner naked. You can't glamorize that. You know what I mean? It's not. I think the deglamorization of it is, I think, and then you see all these elements that are culpability elements that you wouldn't necessarily look at, be it, the way we do geopolitics, be it thought systems, philosophies, be it cultural dynamics, that lead to this. So, I mean, the hardest part really was not going more global in the way I handled it. I saw this really good, this spine cut editor friend of mine who watched it I was referring to earlier, Kieran Vejby, he was the one who kept saying, you can't go global. You have to stay in Southeast Asia because, I would hear stories about the Mideast, which is, of course, the new area in this world.
And
that
Russia.
Used to be. That used to be what Southeast Asia was at that time period in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So that's more like the hotbed area. And of course, there's human sex trafficking happening over there, as there are in any at-risk areas. So, but he kept saying, you've got to just stay in this area. And then, of course, subsequently in the last year, I saw this wonderful documentary called Noturno. I think it was on the long list for Best Doc. An Italian filmmaker, I think, I could be wrong, and it deals with Mideast, and they start touching on human sex trafficking, and I was like, wow, I was so happy that film got made, and I thought, I'm glad because they deal with it in that region, so it's interesting.
Well, the new Abolitionists has won a ton of awards. It's getting us the recognition that it deserves.
It was, as I said, my act of service,
Well, thank you for making it, because it's something that needed to be said, something that needed to be covered in the way that was. Is there anything I could have asked you that I didn't?
No, you're a really good interviewer.
That was not the point of the question, but okay. All right, Christina Zorich, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share in your social media, where you can tag us at The Successful Screenwriter.